Whether we are there or not, ITSP Magazine still gets the best stories. Plenty of conferences and events spark our curiosity and allow us to start conversations with some of the world's brightest minds. In person or virtually, Sean, Martin, and Marco Ciappelli go on location and sit down with them at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Together, we discover what the synergy of these three elements means for the future of humanity.
Check, check.
Perfect.
We're already recording.
We're already recording.
May I join?
You can join.
All right. Thank you so much.
Here we are.
Sean, we're almost at the
Glad
end.
you decided to join us.
Yeah. Well, I heard we're talking about society, so I feel and culture. I want to definitely be part of this conversation, which is one of the many that we had in these 3 days here in Melbourne.
I know, it's fantastic.
Very glad that we made it. Yeah, I'm. My brain is tired, but also full of thoughts and knowledge. So
same for you for the few days.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I've changed into sneakers now.
I live on sneakers.
I've had a different pair every day. I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. So Leanne, you had a session here, and we want to start with a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what you did talk about here.
Absolutely. So I'm Leanne. Now, I'm going to tell you a bit about myself because I think it's really important because my passion is on creating, fostering, building cybersecurity culture and awareness, resilience across society. And looking at the human aspect is really important. And also knowing oneself is important. So I'm going to start off with there. So I think it will be great to get to know who I am. So I'll give you a bit of history. So my grandparents were born in China, southeastern China. Civil war down there, all right? They migrated down to Cambodia. My parents were born in Cambodia, all right? Civil war, again, Khmer Rouge. We were made as refugees, came to Australia, all right, in 1983, a couple months old. My parents always instilled safety and freedom, right? And also work ethic and resilience. And obviously they're being resourceful as well. But safety was the number one key point. They weren't tiger parents, by the way, but they did, say education is very important. And my journey at the moment, we came to Australia with nothing, right? My dad worked at the farms for $10 a day. My mum had to look after 5 kids, and she picked up sewing clothes. From 7 a.m. to 12 o'clock midnight, she had to do that. But she relied on a lot of the women that were working at home, looking after their kids. So mentoring, being resourceful, and network is absolutely important. So I went to a state school, right? State school. I wasn't a grade A student. I wasn't a bad student, all right? I did okay in primary school, high school. I did okay in uni. Now, when uni came in, I guess I found my niche, all right? I found my niche. It was IT, it was computer. A whole heap of people. I guess I did well, right? I was tapped on the shoulder to go, would you like to research on e-commerce security? I said, why not? So I did that. Did really well. They gave me a scholarship. I guess I did well. They tapped me on the shoulder again. Would you like to do a PhD working with companies to look at culture and awareness? And I thought, okay, why not? They gave me a scholarship for that as well. Now, what we found, this was 20 years ago, by the way, 20 years ago. And during that time when I was doing my PhD, I was also given the opportunity to teach as well at university. My first lecture was horrific. It was so bad. And I knew in the back of my mind, right, I had to do something about it, because my parents instilled, work ethics. So over the years, all right, I had improved on that. Yes, I had the cultural side on cybersecurity culture on the side. But most recently, building up resilience along the way. Won multiple awards in teaching and won a National Australia Award for University Teacher of the Year, etc. But the culture thing in organisations back 20 years ago, this is 20 years ago, we were looking at ways, rather than have that in person, like what can we do to change the awareness programs, culture programs, so that that can be more scaled up. And back then it was CD-ROMs, right, CD-ROMs. So online education was a big thing back then. So education, teaching, combining the two, understanding the people, the stakeholders was important. But I did that. It took a few years with these small, medium-sized enterprises, loved it. But when I submitted my thesis, and then on the day as a PhD student, right, finding a job is really important. Online learning was booming. Cybersecurity was getting there, but culture was very embryonic back then as well. I was given a job straight the day after doing my thesis in the online learning, and that was booming at that time. So I've been in that area for quite a while. Then I took a bit of a break, a 1 year's break. I turned 40 and I thought, what next, right? What next? And I love community work, working with my communities. And when I was on that break, I wasn't working. Before the Medibank and Optus outbreak we had in Australia, I can count up to 50 friends, family, community members who were scammed, had a cyber breach. When those two incidents happened, it grew dramatically, 300, 400, 500, I could count up 1,000 vulnerable community members. And I thought, what can I do? With my education, with my connections, my cybersecurity passion, what can I do to help? And that's why I'm back in this role in the last couple of years. And the whole focus on human factors and security culture and building cybersecurity resilience is such a big thing. And that's, for me, that's my value, that's my purpose. Empowering the next generation of learners and building cyber resilience in our communities. So it doesn't matter who I'm affiliated with, that's my aim and that's my purpose.
I love it. Fantastic story. And I wonder, as you were talking, I was thinking, resilience. Does that word mean something different 20 years ago to now? And I'm thinking, to tying culture into this, things have changed in society, right? We were just talking about we all live on our devices. We're not less of a family unit, less of a community in person. Does resilience mean something different now because we're so insulated and looking inward toward ourselves versus a broader community?
I think resilience, depending on what it is, look, the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak impacted everybody, right? If I'm talking about vulnerable communities, right? Digital gadgets, etc., yes, absolutely important, but they still need that face-to-face interaction, right? Everyone's gone through some form of, disruption, and they have to fall, pick themselves up, and keep on walking, that kind of approach. But I believe the gadget is there. It actually increases the opportunities for further connections and networking and talking to people, etc., in that space. But I still feel that in-person nature is really important because I work a lot with our local vulnerable communities. So I sit on the board of directors of one of the largest Southeastern Community Services link. We've got a lot of vulnerable communities there. They still value that face-to-face connection across there.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, I'll put it even more bluntly, are people selfish now and less giving because of technology? And do they only worry about themselves from a security and resilience perspective, and everybody else is up to their own? I don't know, and it may be a regional difference as well. Look, I don't know.
And can I tell you the story? Now, I told you the story that I was on that professional, career break. I'm now working at a educational provider. I do a lot of community work. One of the key things as part of my education programs, I teach human factors in cyber. When students come in, they're not just doing theory. My main aim, I've got that aim and purpose to build cyber resilience in Australia because we've got this ambitious aim to be the most secure country by 2030. We need to, and for me, getting any student, whether you're from corporate doing an undergraduate or master's, you're doing a study, we want to build you holistically to care about society, right? You're asking whether they're more selfish. Right. I don't just teach them the curriculum, the content. I teach them in terms of being holistic individuals and then all day being ethical.
Ethics and morals, yeah.
And the activities, the learning activities, the assessments. I'll tell you the first assessment. It's on cybersecurity awareness. Choose a vulnerable community. The topic is on deep fakes. Go out there. Get to know them well. Don't just think about yourself, think about others. And I like to say that over the last couple of years, whoever I've spoken to about supporting vulnerable communities, they've realised it. So the session that I had on cultivating culture and building cyber resilience, I had repeat audience members that joined me last year, and they put their hand up and they said, look, I listened to your talk last year. and I was inspired, I actually went out to my communities and actually built cyber awareness as well. So I think when you say selfishness, I think that's changing as well. And you really need people who are empathetic and who are passionate in that space. And I really do generally believe that as humans, we do care, and we do care about ourselves, but we also care about our loved ones in society as well. Because us at the moment, you think about us, I mean, yes, for those who are in their professional roles, but we have different identities. We're part of different communities. We have loved ones, we have families, we have members, we have different communities as well. So I believe in that. In terms of being selfish, no, I don't think so. I think that's changing. And we just heard our Lieutenant General talk about building cultural change. The first thing you need to do is build cyber awareness, because people don't know what the threats are, what the knowledge is. You've got to build their knowledge first. The next step is looking at behavioral change and cultural change at the end.
Well, I agree with you, and I'm glad that this is our last conversation of this conference, and we get to talk about this with you, because we did touch on this topic in many different conversations we had, from the corporate training to just 2 podcasts before these, phishing training, and the human element, and how I like to say that we still have a prehistoric brain and a really extensive technology that goes into the future, and many times we do not understand it completely. So when you go and talk about breaking it down and try not to use the technology language, the cybersecurity language, and really be one-on-one with elderly, with the young kids, and find a formula that explain that technology has become part of our society. As we close the door, open the door, or do things in the street, we also do it online. And I think that's when you really break. But where I want to go with you is the idea of changing the culture. Many people say, we're going to change the culture of this company. They think they're just going to switch it, give you a book, here's the new culture, learn it. Culture takes time, right? I mean, your culture come from your grandparents and parents from China. Mine come from Italy, right? And I carry with me that, even if I've been living in the US for 24 years. So how do we accelerate, maybe? Because technology goes fast and culture goes slower.
Look, absolutely agree with you. You are singing my language as well. A lot of the focus over the last few years, and what I'm still seeing as well, I'm hearing, is on cyber awareness. Cyber awareness is about knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Culture happens when you actually take action at the end as well, when you're able to actually change the behavior, the thoughts, and making sure it's normalized within their everyday work as well. And also society, not just in work, but what they're doing in society at the same time. Yeah. Now, I've got a background in education and learning as well. Every single individual are all different. It doesn't mean they're culturally different. There's so many subcultures as well. You may be an extrovert, you may be an introvert, you may have mental health issues, you may have family problems, you may have a type of disability, or you might be neurodiverse. There are so many different nuances, so many different areas that you can apply to this. And with learning, everyone has different learning styles. Everyone has different cognitive abilities as well. So for me, when I talk about culture and cultural change, you really need to get to know the stakeholder individual really well. When you go into an organization, you have different sizes of the organization, different industries, but at the same time, depending on the organization, there might be an overall culture, like enterprise-wide, but then departments will have their own set of cultures. Yeah. And then within the departments, you have subgroups. They'll have this type of cultures as well. And typically this is set from, top down. We know that already as well.
Can I pause you? Because I think one of the part of the title of your session is No One Left Behind.
Yeah.
Because I can see a culture that fits most, but then there's some of these subgroups that just don't quite fit in, right?
So absolutely. So to give you an example, so our Australian government, they're very keen to build cyber resilience and culture across society. They've got this campaign called Stay Safe, Act Now. All right, it's a common language around digital safety and cybersecurity. all right? And they're looking at translating that into multiple languages, right? But how do you go about delivering that and really, implementing that, embedding that into the various communities? You can't have that and have that hosted on a website. That won't work. Yes, we've got the resources, but for example, I'm taking that, I'm working with the Sudanese, South Sudanese community, the Cambodian community, women, and recent refugees and asylum seekers, etc. We're taking that, but we're also going to these communities. I've built long-lasting relationships with them as well. We need to know who they are, their working styles, their lifestyle as well. We take the content, adapt it to suit it to their style as well. And we're looking at training the trainer, getting them to empower them as well. It's what suits them, and you need to know. And if you look at that from an organizational perspective, you're not going to go in and take something off the shelf and go ahead.
Right.
You need to spend time and actually get to know the organization, all the various departments, subgroups, and the people that are there, the champions that are there. And whatever you're communicating, and that's where the learning comes in, understanding the learning styles. And yes, there's a marketing element, and yes, you need to know psychology and across all of that, but you really need to get to know the individuals and what actually works for them, right? And I do believe psychological safety is a big thing, being able, because back a few years ago, everyone was so scared about, accidentally clicking on a link and, in fear of, being reprimanded in an organization. I can see that slowly changing over time. And it comes with leadership, and fingers crossed there is a person who is leading in culture and awareness within the organization that's there as a support. And they're not just there sitting in their ivory tower, but they're in there embedded across the organization, right? But the key thing is you need to know the individuals, contextualize it really well.
Yeah. I think it's a dynamic education because it applies to the school system as well. So I had conversation in the way that education now can use technology to be more adaptive, right? And then I look back at the time that I was in school, and probably in most school nowadays, this is the lesson. It's for everybody. Somebody's going to be really bad. Somebody's going to be really good, but also then I see the progress that you explain about yourself, where I was like you, like mid-school, high school, I was like, I'm going by. Then when I went to college, then I found my niche, and I excel at that because I really loved it and I could do it my way. It wasn't these solutions serves everybody, when ultimately doesn't. It may serve the majority, but it will leave people behind.
Look, and absolutely, and at the moment, I'm in the education space. We do have our traditional 3-year bachelor's degree, master's degree, but the concept of short courses and micro-credentials are gaining momentum. So, back a couple of years ago, we're saying we need 38,000 individuals in cybersecurity to fill that cyber skills gap in Australia by 2030. Our minister, like we've been in Australia just a couple of days ago, just reported back that now we need, I think it was 80+K to fill the cyber skills gap. So that's like a 60% increase, right? So we have these micro-credentials that are 2 weeks, 4 weeks to help upskill and reskill anyone and everyone into this space. So there are so many different ways. So you're talking about how we're going to do this more broadly and upskill. I believe online learning, whether it's adaptive learning, immersive learning, different ways to engage with different learners. Like, for example, we have cyber escape challenges for those to gamify, learning as well.
Yeah.
There's so many different types, and I think that's the key, having that learning element to it as well. And making sure that the content that's there, that's being delivered, it needs to be authentic. You can't just deliver generic content. It's got to evoke emotions and feelings across that as well. Because you can talk the talk, but if you've evoked some emotion, they will listen. They will, remember it down the track.
I like the micro, quick, because at least you learn something, and then you can build on top of that. Years ago, we were always making fun. Same thing in the United States. We need to fill the gap, but in order for you to be at an entry level, you need 10 years of experience. No. How is that going to happen, right? But with the micro element and the niche I think that's a really good approach.
Something that's been burning in my mind since the beginning of your story is belief. And you used to use the word emotion and evoking a feeling. And there's, to your point, in early part of school, you kind of got by. You did what you needed to get the exit to go on to do the next thing.
They didn't care about everything.
Right. And then you found something you cared about, and you invested in that. So I'm wondering how much of a culture is built on a belief, a common belief. And we talked about in the last podcast a series of societal contract where everybody feels safe because of the way that the society works. So they believe in that, and they all adhere, I'll say adhere, but subscribe to the same belief system that this is what works for us. How important is that for a culture, like we're talking about here, not just learning something, but believing in the outcome
the values
as a whole in society, and how important is finding the emotion that feeds on that to then achieve the outcome?
Look, it is extremely, extremely important. I'm a big believer of positive growth mindset. And as I told you my story about my family, war-torn country, coming to Australia, freedom, safety, and I believe cybersecurity at the moment, we are in a world at the moment that we are there's so many threats coming left, right and center, at home, at work, globally, everywhere at the moment. And I think hope is really important, and and like I said, growth, positive mindset. I would love to hope and believe that we are here in it together, supporting each other along the way. And I think if you think negatively and fear, yes, there's a bit of fear, but then we won't go forward, we'll stay backward, and we need to be looking forward as well. And I do believe that there are people around you, in privileged positions with access to education, that genuinely do care about protecting society and each other along the way. So I do believe that that's something that's really important. And I think everyone that I've spoken to about, let's work together, partner up, collaborate, and build a more secure society. At the end of the conversation, they're like, yes, how can we help? Because they want to support each other. They know people personally that has been impacted. Everyone. I mean, before I used to say, it's around 80% who's been, impacted by a scam or security breach. It's 100%, everyone. I'm sure you have clicked on a link or something, in the past that you've impacted, you've been impacted by it. It's everyone's issue at the end of the day. And, and the belief, it's there. We have to be more secure across our society in that. And I think with that belief and that hope, and not just thinking about yourself, but about others in society, we will get there at the end of the day.
I agree, and I like the idea of you can do at the same time use technology to do it at a global level, but also go deep into the local community and adapt the way that you share your knowledge and teach them in the way that they will be more receptive because you talk their language. It's not just the translation. You were mentioning that, right? Translating the language doesn't mean that you get the message through. You're not translating the culture. You need to build the message according to the value that culture has.
Absolutely. And the other thing I'll say to that is, and this connects with your question about belief, is building confidence in people that they can also contribute and they can help. And that's where my mentoring and coaching side to this, I've been mentoring and coaching for the last 25 years. Across students, women, all abilities, to cyber and tech professionals. And the common theme in there is about confidence and realizing their potential at the end of the day. And I think that's really important. And I think Australia, organisations, to the community groups, to families, individuals, it's realizing that confidence and that potential and that belief that we can actually get there and be the most secure country by 2030 to secure each other. We've got the right infrastructure, we've got the resources, we've got organisations, we've got people ready to go. And I think it's that collaboration and that partnership. How do we do that? How do we collectively work together? And cybersecurity is an industry, it's a field where you don't work alone. it's like a group mentality. It's collective.
Yeah.
People want to help each other. It's quite collegial, in that space. So we're very lucky and very fortunate that we don't really have to convince people to come on board. It's there. People just want to volunteer their time to help.
Yeah. And also, I'm going to add to that as an end to it, passion, because you're very passionate about this. I can tell. I know that probably 95% of the people at this event, or if it's RSA conference or Black Hat DEF CON, I mean, talking about passion there, everybody's passionate. And I think most of people is not here just for the money, but is here because they do have a desire to make a better society. So
you know what's not passionate?
But
technology. And that's why I love this conversation. It started with the person and ends with the people.
Yeah.
Ends with the people. It's always about the human. We have to have an active role in this.
Yeah.
And driven by a belief and passion and great people like you.
And that's a great way to close our coverage here, pretty much, of 3 days here in Melbourne. And Leanne, I'm glad that you made it and share your thoughts with us. And for everybody listening, we hope we'll cover again next year, and we'll definitely cover other events. So this is a goodbye and see you soon.
Goodbye.
Stay tuned.
Two humans passionate about what we do.
Yeah, a great way to
having
end.
Amazing people on to tell their story and inspire and hopefully share a passion with the rest of you. So thanks, everybody. Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you.
Thank you.
ThreatLocker is a zero-trust endpoint protection platform providing enterprise-level cybersecurity to organizations globally. With ThreatLocker, you only allow what you need and block everything else, including ransomware. Learn more at threatlocker.com. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Sean and Marco's on-location event coverage conversations. Please take a moment to give the show a good rating and leave a comment. Remember to share this podcast with your friends, family, and colleagues. Come back for more conversations and follow Sean Martin and Marco Ciappelli as they continue their journey toward redefining cybersecurity and society.